And so here I am, done with school, and I get my first job, and I'm like super excited. I have on all white, white clogs, white shirt. I mean, I am Miss Nurse. And so I show up to my first day, and I get there and I'm putting my bag down, and all of a sudden I get tapped on the shoulder by this Caucasian lady, and she goes, "Oh, are you our new housekeeper?" And I was like, "Okay." I said, "I'm actually your new nurse. This is my first day." She's like, "Oh, the table's over there." And so I was like, "Dang, this is my welcome." So I had to fight that throughout my career.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Charlene. I'm so excited to dive into your story. So, I'm doing this a little bit differently than I've been doing it for the last couple episodes. So, usually I don't have much context on my guests. So, I'll go and research and learn a little bit about their background, their career, and then kind of put together a list of questions. But for you, because we've connected once before, and then also because you have a podcast called When the Moment Chooses You, I really want to dive into that moment for you because I know that you're used to hearing other people's stories, but I want to know when the moment chose you and take me through that process. And then I want to just have a natural conversation to really dive into you as the individual.
Okay, that sounds wonderful, and it is so wonderful to see you again. So the moment that chose me, I really have to say the moment that chose me is 2020 when we had, I'm gonna call it like the triple pandemic. We had COVID-19, we had systemic racism, we had our own personal um, challenges because I mean, I experienced loss of my sisters during that time. So a lot of loss, and still as a nurse leader, you still have to show up and do what you do. And I have this positive persona, and so I had to fight through all of that with a smile on my face. And so that was the moment. But when I saw the video of or the TV broadcast of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, it really did something to me. So I am a woman of faith. So I went into prayer and I heard these words: what you do in this moment will determine your destiny and dictate your future. And so I knew I had to move from anguish and frustration and anger to action and impact. I just knew it. It was like a calling. It was like that knowing that you can't deny. And so I kind of wiped my tears and I got up and I felt like I got this commissioning to begin to start sharing my story. And so that's really where it all spun from. I started sharing my story in my organization, and it almost like literally went viral because it was bold, it was disruptive, and it pulled people in to those very difficult conversations that we were having or not having at that time. So it just became this momentum. And then people started reaching out to me asking, "Hey, could you come do this for my team?" That's kind of how I found my voice because I mean, I've been in the healthcare for 30 years, but I didn't share my voice until a few years ago. So
Mhm.
I was silent that whole time. I saw stuff that was happening and that was happening to me, but I chose to be silent. But for some reason, I got a breakthrough. And then I was like, you know what? It's time for me to say something. I have to be the voice for the voiceless because there's other people suffering too, but they're not saying anything. So I'm just gonna go for it. And I'm telling you, Bianca, when I started doing that, my whole path literally shifted. I was
Mm.
just like usually doing my manager role and, taking care of my team and getting into all of that. But then something bigger started calling me to say, you know what, there's too many people suffering. So let's go ahead and make a difference while you're there. So that was really the
Yes.
moment.
Yes. Thank you for taking us through that. So, share with us what your story was. What was the story that you told that went viral that people really started to resonate with?
The story was, first of all, so I'm in leadership, right? And so I'm extremely loving because that's just me. And through the pandemic and through like the racial injustice that was happening, because there's systemic racism within the system. We know that it's researched and everything. But I started sharing about a time where I was a new graduate at that time, and I was cleaning up a patient. She was an older Caucasian woman. And, I wanted her to look cute for her family because it was going to be the first time that they saw her. So I'm cleaning her up and, getting her all nice and dolled up. And then all of a sudden, as I'm washing her, she had these really long fingernails. And so she grabbed my wrist. Like it felt like I was getting cut with a knife. And she looked me straight in the face and she said, "Get your hands off of me." And she used the N word. Now, that was pretty sobering for a new graduate that already is like a minority in the program. To do that, I didn't have anybody to talk to. So from my training from my mom, I had to love her beyond where she was. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. On the side, you know how they say you have a devil and an angel on the shoulder? Well, over here, it was like, put the pillow over her head. And then,
Not the pillow over.
yeah, girl, the pillow. But then the angel, my mom's voice, God's voice, I'm sure, said, love her beyond where she is. I finished cleaning her up. I got her dolled up. They had a beautiful experience, but I was so traumatized in myself. But I was not going to allow her words to define who I was,
Mhm.
right? And so I kept on going. And so here I am, done with school, and I get my first job, and I'm like super excited. I have on all white, white clogs, white shirt. I mean, I am Miss Nurse. And so I show up to my first day, and I get there and I'm putting my bag down, and all of a sudden I get tapped on the shoulder by this Caucasian lady, and she goes, "Oh, are you our new housekeeper?" And I was like, "Okay." I said, "I'm actually your new nurse. This is my first day." She's like, "Oh, the table's over there." And so I was like, "Dang, this is my welcome." So I had to fight that throughout my career, unfortunately. Not all the time, but there were moments like that where I had to kinda deal with that. Now, it was nowhere to talk about this back then because I graduated in '93. So there wasn't really a space. I couldn't go to my professors because they didn't get it. They were like, "Oh, she has Alzheimer's," and, "Oh, she just made a mistake." You know what? So I couldn't say anything. So I pretty much just tucked that in and kept on moving. And then I, transferred up to Sacramento where I am now, and joined a really beautiful, diverse organization. And so this 2020, I feel like all of those moments kind of led up to 2020. I had stuff in me that I needed to get out, but I was afraid to
Mm.
say something because I was like, okay, I gotta protect my job. I don't wanna say the wrong thing. You know how
Mhm.
it is. You get like you don't speak up, even though there's a speak up culture, but you don't speak up like
Mhm.
many people.
Right.
And yeah, so that's really what it is. But I really think that those moments prepared me for 2020 because I didn't know that I was gonna speak up like I did in 2020. When that moment chose me and I knew within myself that I had to step out and start speaking it out and start disrupting things and stop being okay with making other people uncomfortable, then it was like a freedom to share and to see that sharing my story brought transformation and began the process of healing. Healing for myself, I had already been doing the work on being healed from all of that trauma that I faced. So I was in a good space in a sense, although it wounded me, I still was able to, with compassion, lead and then show people how that you have to sometimes there's moments as a nurse, you have to love people beyond where they are. Many times you have to because you're supposed to be the healing environment. But if you're not healed within, it's going to be a little bit different. So I wanted to always make sure that at least I was at that point of healing so that I can still heal others.
Mm. Yes, I have a couple of things I wanna go deeper in. The first thing, so I had my first experience of obvious, I'm not gonna say racism, but obvious racism in Kentucky, where I'm currently at right now visiting. Um, and I'm in a it was so when you're telling me the story about the first time it happened to you, it's very shocking and surprising, right? And you being the compassionate individual that you are, you chose to love her and show compassion beyond her action, right?
Right.
but I'm thinking about you as the person who really didn't have anybody to go to and really, shared what happened to you and really process what happened to you. It's very traumatizing. And I just thought about the moment where I picked up the phone and I called my partner and I called my dad and I was like, "Can you am I tripping? Like, did this really just happen to me?" And me having access to that outlet. So when you're sharing that story with me, I'm thinking about that young girl who didn't have anyone to turn to. How did you process that within yourself? And do you remember what that process felt like, what you did to try to get through it? Because I know a lot of
Yeah.
people are just pushing it down and pushing it forward, which a lot of healthcare professionals do. But what about you? How did you get through that?
Well, like I told you earlier, I'm a woman of faith. And so my faith was really what helped me. My mom, they taught us about God and stuff like that. But, you grow up and you have to figure out that for yourself. And so I figured out who God was for myself and that he is love and all of the things. And so I literally went on a spiritual journey that had to help me with the woundings that I get, not only from that, but from the other things of life that we encounter. Challenges come, people do you wrong, all of the things, and you have to have some type of outlet where you can be healed from it,
Mhm.
or you'll be bitter. Like I could
Yeah,
have allowed that to make me bitter. Now, I did stuff it down a little bit at the time because I didn't really know what to do with it. I
right.
just kept grinding, kept moving through it. And so I think I noticed that within myself. And I feel like nursing school sometimes helps you to just keep going and not pay attention to what's going on within you. You know what I'm saying? Because you're grinding. You're like, it's
Mhm.
such a tough curricula that you're like constantly on the move. You're constantly thinking, studying, and all of that. And then when you get out, now you're busy working and doing 16 hours here, this, that, and the other. You don't have time to really think and to really see how you're actually doing. And if
Yeah.
no one asks you, hey, how are you today? Guess what? You're going to keep on grinding. And so I had to build my spiritual self up so that I can handle all of the things that I was dealing with. And that was a hard one to deal with. But because I had two other peers that were African American in the program. So I was able to talk to them. I was at least had an outlet to talk about it. We didn't know what to
Mhm.
do about it, but
Right.
we still got a chance to kind of let the release valve out. But further, I would say the most important part for me was my relationship with God because it made me go deeper because I just could not. My mom and dad taught us do not allow other people's words to define who you are. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt because it hurt. It
Mhm.
stung. It was like I'm this new nurse, like very excited, and then you get hit with a punch like that.
Mhm.
Because I had never really experienced that before. And so that's what I had to turn to the only one that knows
Right. Your
who I
faith.
am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I too was able to leverage my faith in order to really process the situation. So I study Kabbalah principles, and
Uh-huh.
part of it is, understanding that each of these circumstances is a reflection of yourself. So I know that this is a little bit higher way of thinking about it. I'm not excusing the behavior, but I was questioning what in myself do I need to heal that doesn't allow me to be compassionate to others? Because that's the first thing I'm looking for is in the lesson. And my partner and my dad were like, F that. That's not has nothing to do with you. Okay, we're not doing that today. No,
No, let's not
that
go there
is
today.
not you. You're a very empathetic, compassionate individual. That's what
Yes.
you do. So there's no, and I'm just like, well, maybe in moments like this, because I had this experience, I'm going to be able to allow myself to really connect to others that have experienced things like this so that I can understand that and allow them to feel more seen and heard. But also,
Yeah.
I do reflect sometimes and wonder, like, is there times where I wasn't compassionate to this individual? It was a situation where I needed help with something, and then, it was clear that they didn't wanna help me because of the color of my skin. So, anyways, but essentially, I try to take each situation, no matter what it is, as a lesson, and really that's how
Yeah.
I work through principles in order to help me move through traumatic circumstances and process things effectively. But again, not excusing the behavior, but having some type of faith to really go to process these traumatic experiences is definitely helpful.
Yeah, and that's
Go ahead.
that's you not losing you because the key is I don't wanna lose myself in this, and I'm not going to.
Right.
Now, would I say that I I love her? Not necessarily,
Mhm.
but because of higher consciousness, because of the God that is love, I have the capacity to love someone beyond that moment. Now, will I be around people that have done me wrong and stuff like that? No,
Right.
I'm not because I'm protecting my peace. I'm protecting those that love me and those that don't. I don't want to be around them, but that doesn't. But I guess what you hear what I'm saying
Yeah,
though,
I
right?
see it. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because we can't be doormats. I'm not going to be walked over.
Right.
But in that moment, in my young Charlene self, shy, barely have a voice already, not knowing who to turn to, I really didn't know what to do. The only thing that I had to turn to was God because I didn't
Yeah.
have any friends that could like really guide
Yeah.
me through it. No mentors because there was
Yeah.
people that didn't look like me,
Right.
So it was it was a lonely journey, but to me, it prepared me for this moment that I'm living in right now.
And I think you hit it on the head where it said it's really just an opportunity for you not to lose you
Yeah,
and, get wrapped up in that specific moment. Show compassion and love her beyond that moment, but really you're loving yourself.
exactly.
Because
That's
had you
good.
allowed yourself to get wrapped up in that moment, then she's taking the power away from you.
That's right.
So
That's good. Yeah, that's exactly it, Bianca.
mhm,
That's it because I mean, I'm sure you've seen it too, how people get so angry and I mean, they are like not themselves. Like I refuse to let somebody taint my brand. My brand is a brand of love, of peace, of kindness, and I'm not going to allow you to make me so bitter that I hate you or, all of the other negative parts of energy that
mhm,
I don't want to live in my body because I want to live and I'm not going to
mhm.
let anybody kill me.
Yeah, for sure. And when you work so hard to reach a place of peace, like, there's
Yes.
nothing worth disrupting that.
Yes.
And another thing you said was when you finally had the opportunity to start sharing your voice, you were a, nurse in leadership for a very major organization. So,
Mhm.
a lot of times people are afraid to really speak out because they are worried about their position, especially when they're at an executive level. So, tell me what that thought process was. Was there a thought process? And then how did the organization react after you shared your story?
Yeah, it definitely was, it was it was a risk, but it was a risk because I felt commissioned to do it. It was a risk that I was willing to take. It was kind of one of those defining moments, like you're supposed to do this. And so it became such a passion that really it could not be stopped. I was willing to share my story at the risk of potentially losing my job. It
Wow.
had nothing to do with that particular organization, but it was a prior organization, so I think that made it a little bit more comfortable for them to receive it. Now, I did talk about some other things that, transpired there, but they were really, I think it was like shock at first because here Charlene is so quiet and so loving and all of this, and then, so one of my, assistant nurse managers called me during that time when, with George Floyd. And she was like, Charlene, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. She's Caucasian. And she was like, What am I supposed to say? Like, I don't know what to do. Everybody's upset. I just don't know what to do. She's like, Can you do something? And, I'm on vacation. I'm like, You know what? That's not my problem.
Uh-huh.
But, the heart of love overcame. And I was like, You know what? I do have to do something for my sisters. And so I did like I called it a soul check, a listening session so that they can kind of share their story. So I shared my story and they were like blown away with some of the things that I shared. And then they started sharing their story. We were crying together. We were processing together. It was the most powerful thing ever. And so that word got back that I did that to I forgot who it got back to, but then the hospital had me do a bigger one for the whole hospital. And so I shared my story even broader. And then when I shared my story, somebody from the regional offices was listening to the presentation and she pinged me on the side and she was like, "Oh my God, where have you been?"
Mhm,
She said, "We need somebody with a voice like yours." And so I began to start. She was kind of like my sponsor. Now, that was the first time, sis, that I had been seen,
mm,
that I had been heard in all of those years. Nobody saw me.
mm,
Nobody heard me. I just was like this person that was almost invisible
mhm,
until I start speaking up. And so when
mhm,
that happened, she hosted me to all of these different trainings and things like that. And it was just like amazing because I got to like brainstorm and create curricula and do things that would help the organization out. So it actually, I think the organization really, really benefited from you. Matter of fact, before I left the organization, I met with the CNE. And she said, "You know what? I'm going to say thank you." She said, "Because I had just stepped into my CNE role and you said you wanted to talk to me."
mm,
And then I was like, "Yeah, I remember that." And she said, That was the hardest conversation I've ever had because I went to her and I was like, "You know what? I noticed that there's not many Black nurse leaders. I mean, what's up with that?"
mhm, right.
And so she was like, because that's a tough conversation,
Yeah,
but she was so
but
amazing.
since we're talking about it, like
Yeah, but she was so amazing. She took it in, you know, just tried to be compassionate and empathetic as she could. But from that moment on, her journey took a whole shift. I mean, did the implicit bias test. She started like doing the work, and I mean, things just shifted, changed beautifully. We got a very diverse leadership team and things like that. But it took somebody having to say something.
yes,
Because some people don't, like, pay attention to it. Like, I pay attention to it and staff pay attention to it, but
right.
leaders, sometimes they don't pay attention to it, but, we wanna see representation across the scale, and we
Mhm,
just do. It just feels better when you can see people that represent the population that they're taking care of. Yeah, so
absolutely.
it was powerful, and it just shifted me on a different journey that, I still continue to be on.
Absolutely, and you couldn't have started the journey unless you shared your voice.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of people who want to share their story and share their voice, who are in very prestigious roles in certain organizations that may, hesitate, but you have demonstrated that really sharing your voice is the way that you were finally able to be seen and heard and really make the impact that you were called to make in your organization. Now, there's a lot of compassion in your voice and your delivery is very, soft, and I'm sure that they were able to receive it in a way that would ignite change.
Yeah.
And I know that it's difficult for me to say this because when you are sharing something that is true to you, you want to say it in the way that you would say it and the way that you would communicate it. But how do you think the tone and the delivery, like how important is the tone and delivery when you are sharing your voice on situations like this when it comes to, racism in workplace settings?
Yeah, I think what I would say to that is because I had relationships, because I think relationships are critical. Like I mean, usually you're developing relationships when you're in the workplace, especially as long as I was there. And so, like I said, my brand was representing love and kindness and stuff like that. So when I began to speak, it was a certain tone that I used. Now, my peers could not use the tone that I used because
Mhm.
they were still angry. They were
Mm,
still upset.
mhm.
But I knew that the strategy that I was using was very effective because I was able to get in spaces and talk about things that were never talked about before. But I came from a place of this compassion, and I think that's what helped with the whole thing out for me. I was able to get a lot done because I didn't necessarily come to it with like anger. Like if I woulda came when I was angry, it just wouldn't have flew. It wouldn't have
Right.
went anywhere. But I knew that I had to, and I think that's kinda how it's built up. I believe that God built me the way that He did so that I can
Mhm.
have that conversation, like, very difficult, like, I have had some very, very difficult conversations, but the person on the other end, they receive it because it comes from that place of love and it comes from a place of healing. Now, if
Mhm.
I was still wounded, sis, I probably would not have exuded that compassion. I do think that you have to do the work first, or
Mhm.
it will pour out of you. The anger will pour out, the trauma will pour out. So I make it a pact to take care of myself so that when situations come up, okay, I'm not saying that I'm 100%, but
Mhm.
I'm a work in progress. I'm a
Mhm.
masterpiece and a work in progress.
Yes, yes,
And so you know what I mean? So it's you
absolutely.
have to have some type of healing that has started for you before you engage in these kind of conversations because they're triggering. Like some of the when I did the listening session, I mean, people were triggered. And then when I did the bigger one with other representations there, it was very difficult for them, and by the end of the session, they were bawling and they were, like, apologizing and, feeling what we were feeling. They couldn't relate to it, but they can see
Mhm.
how much it has hurt. But it
Mhm.
was just powerful, and I think that was my strategy. Um the strategy of like loving somebody beyond it, which is extremely difficult to
Yeah,
do. I
yeah.
have to be honest, it's very difficult to do that. But I have, because of what I've gone through in my life, I've made it a pact to do that because I am not going to allow that to live in my body. Because,
Mhm.
I'm sure you've read
Yeah.
The Body Keeps Score. That anger will harbor in here. And then the other thing says, I can't love freely. I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to block my love flow. No,
Right.
I'm not gonna, nobody's worth that to me. I want to keep my heart open. Yeah, it's been difficult, but personal development, prayer, all of the things that help us to be better human beings, that's what I practice so that I can meet those moments with compassion. Now, do I get it right every time? Nope, I
Mhm.
don't.
Mhm.
But the
And that's
majority of the
okay.
time, yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm cool with that. The majority of the time, I'm cool. I can get it done. But some people just like rub you the wrong way. So
Mhm.
you choose not to be around those people.
Correct. Absolutely. That was beautifully said, and that definitely gives insight for someone who is ready to share their voice. And how giving them techniques on how they can approach it in the way that's best for them. Now, I want to turn it over to your leadership hat. And say, for example, you have an employee who comes to you and is wounded and is hurt, and their delivery is very angry in that sense. What advice would you have for leaders to try to open up and receive them, knowing that they're coming from a wounded place instead of labeling them as an angry Black woman or man?
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely. So I would say leadership, I mean, leadership is like a journey, but I don't think you should be in leadership if you do not know how to listen. I'm
Mhm,
talking about empathetic listening. There are tools that can help us to be more coherent and to listen better. Like for instance, I'm a heart math trainer. And so they have this technique called coherent communication. And it's mindfulness practices that help us to move out of our judgy down to our compassionate heart. And so I think leaders need to learn how to listen. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I have had some leaders that do not know how to listen. I
mhm,
mean, that was part of the trauma that I faced before I retired. I had built up so much trauma from poor leadership that it actually did some wounding to me that I did not recognize until I left.
mhm,
And so I had to process through that. But I would tell any leader out there, they have to listen. You will not understand where that person is coming from if you have not walked a day in their shoes.
mhm,
And so your responsibility as a leader is to sit and to listen and to feel, because we can introspect, so we can hear our words before they come out, before you try to fix, before you try to say, oh, I can relate to that, before you try to say, oh, I have a Black husband, or, before you try to say any of those things, you need to just listen and just be there as a support. What can I do to serve you? What
mhm.
can I do to help you? Can I connect you with
Sorry,
EAP?
I'm dying at I have a Black husband. I was trying to hold it.
Girl, I
Crying.
had to drop that because, hey, look, that's what people try to say. They'll be like, well, I understand because my husband is like, no, you don't. You have not lived a day in my shoes.
Okay, that is hilarious. Okay, but yes, you have to know
Girl,
how
you
to
have no
listen.
idea how many times I have heard that.
And it's like, "Do you? Interesting.
Yes.
Alright." That is funny, but yes, you have to hold space so that you're able to listen for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and I
Mm,
think that's the most important to really hold space, and don't judge someone because they're coming to you angry. We have years of trauma that we're
mhm,
trying to process as African Americans.
mhm,
And so you need to be empathetic. You need to stay open. You need to be okay with sitting with the negative and the positive. Like you're
mhm,
okay with me speaking positive. So I need to tell you something right now. Just like I had to go to a CNA. You know what? I feel horrible that I feel like I'm carrying the weight of all of the blacks on my shoulder. And she was like, well, you're not supposed to be doing that. Yeah, but there's something that I am doing because if I don't, then what am I going to do? And that actually sis was kind of limiting me from staying longer than I needed to stay,
mm,
which in turn caused me to have more soul pain as I got out.
mhm,
So I would totally say leaders are responsible for listening and really trying to see me. Now they won't understand, but you can see me and you can help me to resources or help connect me to someone that looks like me,
mhm,
perhaps. Like
mhm.
that would have been amazing
Yeah.
if I could have had somebody just to talk it through with, but I didn't necessarily have that until a little bit later on in my career.
Mhm. I love that, and I love that you leveraged your own experience to really inspire others, and it's sad that you did stay longer than necessary to really advocate for individuals because you know that you were that person, and
Yeah.
you didn't necessarily have that person to go to. Something came up, so I'm gonna open up another conversation.
Okay.
So there may be organizations where you do have someone that looks like you to go with, but they don't necessarily empathize with your experience. Have you had that type of scenario? I'm trying to say this in the best way possible. W Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I feel you, girl.
Okay. They
Well,
look like you, but I'm not really sure if they can really if they're really okay, if they're a great listener and they're willing to empathize you at a different level, or are they very ego driven and positioning themselves in proximity of other people who don't look like you?
yeah, I think for me, because I choose wisely, um, I tend to flow with people that I can flow with, but I have had instances where somebody does look like me, but they were more so like, you shouldn't do what you're doing. You shouldn't
Mhm,
speak up. You shouldn't. It was more so like, just keep quiet. You know what I
mhm,
mean? It was
mhm.
more of a, why don't you just continue to shrink to fit so that you won't create any problems for us? You know,
Right.
it was more of that type of thing that I was getting, which, really was like, wow.
Mhm,
But I was willing to stand alone because, somebody has to speak up. And I'm so thankful that I spoke up because after speaking up, so many people came to me and said, thank you.
mhm,
You just said something that I would never say.
mhm.
And so it was very powerful. But yeah, we do have that. I know exactly what
Yeah.
you're talking about. And
Yeah,
some
and
of
it
my
could
peers have actually dealt with that more than me because you think that you're going to go have somebody hear and say, okay, they get it, but then nothing, crickets.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it could be from their own fear as well. So,
Yeah.
their fear. So it could just come from a place of like, listen, I worked hard to get here and I'm trying to stay here and I don't feel obligated to help other people just because, we're of the same race. However, I just want everybody to be mindful that just because there are people that look like us in organizations doesn't mean they're the safest place. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you are having, this dialogue. But if you use your intuition, if you have a sense that
Yeah.
this person is not supporting you, you might be the one that has to advocate for yourselves. That's another thing is really empowering people to advocate for themselves and not to rely on other people to do it for us, no matter what they look like.
Well, and
Um
then if you never like address it, like if you're dealing with it, you for instance, let's just say a nurse and she comes to work and I hear this all the time. They're giving me really difficult patients because I'm, black. And you know what? I experienced that myself. And so you have to speak up. You have to start saying something, but a lot of people withdraw and just say, you know what? I'm just going to do my 8 and just get out of here.
Mhm,
But then you're stacking up burnout. You're
mhm,
stacking up that potential to really feel like you're disengaged and you're just coming to work and being a robot. And that's really not what nursing is. You're supposed to be able to be your full authentic self, touch those lives that need to be touched in that moment, go home fulfilled. But it has like totally fallen from that place of where it
mhm,
used to be. So,
mhm.
so yeah,
Absolutely. So I was going to ask you about your career journey and how you got into leadership, but I think based on the conversation so far, it's very clear
yeah.
that you are just born to be a leader, and were in a position to definitely make an impact in that role. So let's talk about your time in leadership and what ultimately made you think or start to believe that it was time for you to leave.
Yeah, I actually says it didn't really want to be in leadership. I have to be
Oh,
honest.
okay.
I kind of
Okay.
fought a little bit. I kind of struggled a little bit. So my director at the time, which I would say was my favorite director, she started saying, "Charlene, I noticed that you're always like leading things and what did you think about being a A&M?" And I was like, mm. No,
Well, now what's
girl,
an A&M for people who don't know?
it's an assistant nurse manager.
Okay.
So I was like, because when you see how it's modeled, I didn't want it. I didn't
Mhm,
want it because there's no work-life balance. There's just no.
mhm,
And but then my other and another A&M came. She was like, "You need to," and she was a sister. She was like, "You need to be an A&M." And so people just kept like saying it. And then I took it to prayer because I was like, I do not want more problems. I just
mhm,
want to come to work and take care of my babies and go home.
mhm,
And of course, the call happened, and then I said yes. And my A&M journey actually was really good because I had to shift my mindset to, okay, it's still about the patient, but now I have peers that really need support, that really need help. And so because I love people, it was really, really amazing. So I was able to use my leadership style. And I would say my leadership style is similar to transformational leader or servant leader because I really like to listen to the staff and see what's going on. And so I created this leadership style that was heart centered.
mhm.
And that was a little different for people because I would go in every day. Good morning, everybody. You're loved and appreciated. They were like,
Oh, like, "What?
"Can be
Okay."
like, yeah, but look, they text me today missing that. They're like, oh my God, nobody's telling us they love and appreciate us anymore.
Oh.
And I was like, well, just know that I do. But I really intentionally did that because when I moved up into being an A&M, it was not many of us.
Mhm,
And so there were some challenges there. I felt like maybe there was a couple of people that really was challenged with me being the leader. And so one story I'll tell is, and I spoke to her every day. No matter what she did, I would say, "Good morning, so and so. You're loved and appreciated," and
mhm.
she'd do like that, turn her head. I mean, right in my face. And she did that. Guess how long I had to do that? A year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did that for a year. But that next year, she came into my office,
How did
talked
okay, s let's so you mean to tell me you walked into work every day and you told her you are loved and appreciated, and she
every
turned
day.
her head at you every
Turned
single
it
day for a
or didn't
year?
speak for a year. She did not speak. She did not
Okay.
do anything. Now, I could have done so many things
Yeah.
to her, but I'm painting this example. This is my brand,
Yeah,
sis. I'm
absolutely.
walking in this love. So, but the next year, she came to me in my office as if we've been talking every day.
She was like, "This lady," she probably goes, "I was like, this lady talks to me every day." She says, "Love you," and I never respond, and, like, she will not give up. Wow.
I'm telling you, it was like, and then after she left the office, I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. But she talked to me, told me about her family, told me about some stock market stuff she's working on. I mean, just like we were best friends. It was
Mhm.
crazy.
Mhm.
But I also saw in that, you know what, you can actually now that takes you really working on yourself. See, I've been
Yeah.
doing the work, so it was a little bit easier for me to, and it was easier for me to do that, but also, sis, when I go to work, I declare that I walk in undisturbed composure. I am not going to let your foolishness come into my shield.
Mhm.
And so that was my mantra that every day I would get out of bed because I recognized that I was starting to have some issues with people trying to like just dump on me and just make it bad for me. And so I started saying, you know what, I got to get one up on this because I could feel myself getting upset. And so I started doing that declaration. I walk in undisturbed composure because I knew that challenges were going to come, but I had to combat it with something. So my mantra every morning was that I walk
Mhm.
in undisturbed composure. And to me, what I saw in my head when I did that was I had a force field around me of undisturbed composure. So when I get there, they immediately start throwing darts at me. I mean, it was
Mhm.
immediate, but they're bouncing off of me because I'm in my space. You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
So it was a great journey though. All of these little tools that I used to help me to lead authentically was
Mhm.
pretty powerful and they were really impactful. So I would just lead that way with love, walking in like nothing was bothering me. So much so that when all things start spinning out of control there, they would be like, "Charlene, why are you not concerned about this?" I was like,
Right.
"Because I have to keep a level head so that I can think and I can strategize and
Mhm.
I can make wise decisions." And so they got it after a while because they thought that I was just didn't care. But it wasn't that. It's just when things get extremely crazy, I go all the way quiet so that I
Mhm.
can see my next step. And so it was a great journey, but around after being there for now I was an A&M for 10 years, way too long
Yeah.
to be an A&M.
Mhm.
And it was like I said, because I didn't really have mentorship or anything. I didn't think about like doing anything else necessarily
Mhm.
until 2010 and that's when caring science came in my life, which is a theory that nurses practice with to lead authentically, or in
Mhm.
other words, to be while we're doing.
Mhm.
Instead of just being task oriented, you're actually connecting with people. So
Mhm.
that totally ignited me because I had gotten burned out in 2009ish. And when they brought that in, that just gave me like some fire. And I began to start teaching classes and things like that. But there was this little voice on the inside of me that was really restless. No matter how much, how many accolades, how much happy times, no matter what I was doing, starting to receive awards and stuff like that toward the end. But this voice, this whisper got bigger and louder and louder and I knew something was happening because I would come to work and I would be frustrated. I would be irritated. I would be like, I can't wait to get home. I'd take a vacation,
Mhm.
but it didn't give me rest.
Mhm.
I'd take time. I mean, I literally do all of that just to try to say, okay, what's going on? And then in 2021 ish, I took a month off finally because I was like, I'm determined to find out what's going on here. And I found that quote that I always post on my page. It says, "So you don't die when your heart stops beating. You die when your heartbeats have no meaning." And
Mm.
so, boom, that just gave me the answer. You know what? I've lost meaning. I've lost the joy of my heartbeats. Like I used to be excited to come to work and do the thing, but now I can't wait to go home.
Mhm.
And so I knew right then in 2021 that it was going to be time for me to retire. But how do you leave a six-figure job?
Right.
I'm just saying the comfort zone
Right.
was very comfortable. So it took me a little while to process. So that was in 21. So what I did instead, I started a podcast when the
Mhm.
moment chooses you. And that brought me fulfillment and joy meeting different
Yes.
people, connecting. And so I was able to keep on going, but it started getting louder and louder and louder. And then finally, at the beginning. Now, let me just say this before I declared it in January, I had been saying every year, I'm gonna retire this year. I'm gonna retire this year. I'm
Mhm.
gonna retire this year. And then finally, January, I took some time off. January 1st, I came back. I told my boss, hey, I'm retiring. I'm getting ready to put in my paperwork, yada, yada, yada.
Now, what was your
And
position when you retired? Were you
I
still
was a manager.
Okay, manager.
Yeah, I
Okay.
had moved up to management, and then they were asking if I wanted to go for director, but I was done. My
Mhm,
soul was weary. I was exhausted. My well-being was at stake. I
mhm,
was like, you know what, something, because I would come home and my husband, he's like, honey, what's going on? Like,
mhm,
you're exhausted. Like, I would literally come home and couldn't do anything.
mhm,
I mean, exhausted.
mhm.
And so I knew that I had to do something about it. And so when January came, I was like, hey, I'm retiring. And then July 5th came and I was like, yay, I'm free.
Yay! Yay!
Yeah, I did it. But girl, so a month after, somewhere around there, I was stuck. I had
Mm,
been writing my book, When the Moment Chooses You. I've got several books that I'm writing. I'm creating content. And all of a sudden, I am stuck. Can't think, can't write, can't create. I'm wondering, okay, I got free to do this. I've been waiting to do this. What happened?
interesting.
Oh, it was crazy. And then I went outside and I did one of my little God walks because I was like, so I got to figure out what's going on here. Oh my God. He showed me that I was experiencing soul pain because I was misaligned for so long that my soul began to start suffering, like leaking almost essence from it. And so that's why I couldn't get fulfilled anymore, no matter how many accolades I got. It was something so deep that I had to deal with. So I began to start doing that work of chipping away at those layers. And a lot of it had to do with the leadership that I was under because it was very kind of like a shrink to fit mentality. And so I didn't know that I was dealing with that until I got quiet.
Mhm,
And so it gave me time to retiring gave me time to get quiet enough to see what was deeply rooted underneath it all. And so
mhm.
after I let myself go through that painful but beautiful process, it was amazing because it seems like it took about 30 days. And then after that, the flow came back. I got extremely creative. Like I was all me and it was
Mm.
just super amazing. So I think being misaligned is really something else because I initially thought it was burnout, but
Yeah, I was going to assume that it was sometimes we get really inspired to do things that are triggered by the current environment that we're in. But once we don't have that to leverage, we kind of lose the inspiration and have to figure out how we can get it again. But through the conversations I'm having with my clients and also through this podcast, I'm realizing that there's a lot of work that has to be done once you make that initial transition to
yes.
really heal from what it is you've experienced to fully
Yes.
step into the next thing. Because think about it, you come from a high achieving career, then all of a sudden you started something else. Now you think that you're going to leave and then I'm going to continue doing this. You're still not giving yourself the time to really process and heal exactly what you've gone through. And that's exactly what you had to do. So I'm
Exactly.
interested in the work that you did in that 30-day time period to really get back in alignment.
Yeah, the most important thing I did, I said that I wasn't gonna create, I wasn't gonna do any of the things that I was trying to do. I was gonna sit in silence. And I literally sat in silence and journaled. That is what I did because I needed to hear from Charlene. I needed to hear the heart of what Charlene really wanted because Charlene, her value was tied to her title.
Mm,
And so I had to see that my title had nothing to do with the wonderful human being that I am. And so I think that's what happens to a lot of times when you're like, say, nursing or profession, you're so driven and you're so accomplishment driven that when you stop, you feel like now you don't have any worth, which is way, way south because I know that my value is so much more than that title. But I had to get to that place of like seeing that. I had buried it under all of the stuff that I
mhm,
had dealt with that I didn't. I started seeing that, you know what, Charlene, you are thinking that if you're not busy, you are not valuable. But that's
mhm.
a lie, that's a lie. You
Right.
are valuable because of who you
That's
are,
it.
no matter whether you're working or you're off or whatever. So, it was some, transformation that I had to do. I like to say it like this, I wanna be the highest expression of myself, so there's always room for me to grow,
Mhm,
and there's always room for me to be better than I was yesterday, and so I made myself go through that process, and I say it made myself because Charlene was trying to be busy. Charlene was trying to create busyness in those 30 days.
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, let me create this. Let me do." No, you're not doing nothing. You're gonna sit and you're gonna be quiet. And I had to make myself do that. But as I did that, sis, layers started lifting. Offense started lifting. All of the things that I had dealt with those particular people started lifting. And I just start feeling this freedom that was like amazing and beautiful. And that's what shifted me into the flow that I'm in now. Like now I'm in such a beautiful flow that I am not concerned about finances. I'm not concerned about how much I'm going to make in my business. I'm not concerned about any of that. It's a beautiful place to be where I can just flow and
Mhm.
do the things that's in my heart to do. And then if it doesn't align, guess what? Charlene's not doing it.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I loved about that process is that you took time to listen to you. So
Yeah.
even I do career transition coaching. I actually think it's not wise to work with anybody when you first transition. Maybe it will be in some cases, but I think it's even more powerful just to sit with yourself. Because even if you hire somebody or a mentor to help you through that process, which there's maybe a place for, I think at the end of the day, if you have the opportunity to listen to yourself, that
Yes.
is how you'll be able to really fully understand what it is you really want. So when
Yes.
you were journaling, what did Charlene want? What did you want?
Well, I wanted freedom. I wanted flow. I wanted ease. I wanted all the things that I didn't have for 23 years. And I really wanted to feel like I was actually in my vocation. And
Mhm.
that was my occupation. But
Mm.
my vocation is a
Describe the
calling.
difference.
So
Occupation.
occupation is my job as
Mhm.
I'm a nurse. So I'm a nurse leader. That's my occupation. So it's your job basically.
Mhm.
But vocation is a calling. I'm
Mhm.
one who inspires. I love getting other people to share their stories. I love transformation. I love leading transformative experiences for people so that they can become better human beings. So you
Mhm.
see, I got into that flow, and that's what Charlene wanted. I want to make sure that I'm touching lives in that manner, not the
Yes.
occupation. Now, I was still doing a little bit of that in the occupation, but I could not. It was at the perimeter, so I'll
Right.
put it that way.
Right. Mhm.
But I wanted it in the center. I wanted it, everything that I do, I wanted to be having to deal with helping people to transform, helping them to heal. I created in my quiet time. It was just beautiful. I wrote down, it's called the Heart Framework. That all came out of me being quiet.
Mhm.
And it's the way that I'm going to help people to heal, to become more engaged, to be more authentic, to be resilient, and to be transformed. So I'm so excited about that because that came just out of just the invisible. And
Yes.
that's how I'm going to move forward because it actually fits with who I am too.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I like what you said there because I don't think, sis, that we do that enough. We don't listen to ourselves and we don't even know what we want.
Right.
We don't because we're too busy to find out what we want. I know for sure what I don't want. I don't want to be burnt out. I'm 59 years old. I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want to put wear and tear on my body. I want to do those things that are fulfilling to my heart until my last breath. I want to
Mhm.
make other people breathe easier because of my presence. I want to do those types of things now at this stage in my life. And so I was more of those type of things that I was journaling, just the impact that you want to leave, the legacy you want to
Mhm.
leave, the people that you want to impact, how you want to show up, your presence, and to be able to do the things, like to be able to love people beyond where they are.
Mhm.
That's no joke.
Yes, and if it's I always say if it's challenging to figure out what it is you want, like you said, start with writing down the things you don't want.
Yeah.
Start with writing down things you are over, because that's where the energy is most prevalent, right? It's like,
Yes.
I'm over this, I don't want this, I don't like this. And through that activity, you'll be able to kind of pinpoint, what are the things you are looking for. So that's a perfect place to start. Is like if you're overwhelmed, you're not fulfilled, you're over it, like, sit down, and if you don't have the clarity to figure out exactly what it is you want, then sit down and just write down what you don't want anymore, and then let the clarity birth from that. But I
Yes.
love that you were able to really capture freedom and what would it
Yes.
so that's what I wanted. That's what
Yeah.
I wanted was freedom, and I realized, like, that is the entire peace, freedom, fulfillment, flow.
Yes.
That is
Yeah.
the entire goal. So, and to reach that place is it's a lot of work, but I'm so happy that you were able to really get there. So,
Yes.
after that experience, what was the first thing you decided to do once you were, like, back in alignment and knew exactly what you wanted to do next?
Well, when I was back in alignment, I had to finish my book,
Mhm,
because I had started When the Moment Chooses You, my new book. It came out in March. I had been writing on it for about a year and a half, and so I finally got back into the book, and I was able to flow and get that done. So I launched my book. I actually launched um, my business because I did not launch my business. I created it before I left,
mhm,
but I didn't launch it until like February of
mhm,
2024 because I kind of wanted to, I mean, 2025, because I kind of wanted to just like be, like you said. I
mhm,
just wanted to find out what Charlene wants. What does this need to look like? Not really pushing it necessarily, but just getting into where I believe the flow is. And so yeah, that's what I did. I just kinda like, "Oh, I'm just gonna, like, take it easy," but launch time came in January. Then I launched the new, podcast too, The Whispers of Wellness, because I wanted to be a little bit more targeted,
mhm,
because what I did realize while I was there is that my well-being was at stake,
mhm,
and I was too busy to see it. And
mhm,
so in retrospect, I took vacations, but I didn't take enough vacations. I
mm,
didn't because I felt so obligated to be there as a manager 24/7. You got the phone on your hip 24/7. When I finally retired, my son was like, "Mom, you ain't looking at your phone."
mhm,
And I was like, "You know what? This is so pathetic." But I had to like always be responding to calls and things like that. So that freedom to actually just be somewhere and absolutely do nothing and feel amazing about doing nothing,
mhm,
it's been wonderful. So, that was the first thing, writing the book. Then I started accepting, um, consultant work. I didn't wanna do too much, but I did 2 things just to see how that would be. Because this is new for me.
yeah,
I've never been a
yeah,
consultant before,
yeah,
but that was really cool. I got a chance to fly out and do a few things. I was like, "Oh, okay, I like this."
mhm,
But don't really plan on doing it, like, a lot. I'm
right,
just gonna do maybe 1 or 2 things a month, and I'll be happy with that,
mhm,
for
mhm,
now anyway.
exactly. So you wrote your book, is it When the Moment Chooses You behind you?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, it is. This is my new baby,
So what is your
and
book about? What were
well, it's From Silence to Strength, a nurse leader's journey to finding her voice and unleashing her impact. I really just tell about my story, but in there, I pull in the audience so that they can see what their story is, and I have some reflective exercises and things like that at the end of every chapter. And it has been really transformative. I'm getting such beautiful reviews, and it actually transcends, goes beyond nursing. So that's what
Mhm.
I'm really loving. That like my brother in Columbus, he got it, and oh my god, he has just, like, totally took off. I mean, he left his job. He started
It was inspiring!
Yeah, he started 2 businesses. I mean, he is just, like, making some things happen, so
Mhm,
to hear that kinda stuff is really amazing because I knew it was gonna go beyond nursing because there's principles in it. Yes, I talk about my story. I shared some of the stories that I shared with you in there, and also some of the other moments that, call us to do things,
mhm,
that we wanna do for our life, our dream, our destiny, and
mhm.
how we stay stuck. So I can help people kinda navigate through that. So it's super awesome. I'm so excited about it. I'm gonna begin to have, When the Moment Chooses You encounters, and
Yes,
so
I
that will
love
be
that.
my next level, to have sessions that actually get people to encounter those moments that call them to do something and to
Mm,
help people to get through those barriers that they're facing.
okay, where can we grab the book? I wanna
You can grab the book I have it on Amazon, but I also have it on my website. So Amazon has all 3 versions of course, the
okay.
this is a soft copy. But there's hardback and then there's Kindle as well.
Okay.
If
Perfect.
there's bulk orders, though, I have to you can do that through my email. We had a few people order bulk orders for Nurses Week
Okay.
in particular, but
Awesome. I can't wait to read it. Okay.
yeah, I'll have
So
to
are
send you one. Give me your info so I could just send you one.
no, I'm gonna buy one.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm buying one. I'm buying one, sis. Okay. All right. So are you still doing your podcast, which the
Yes.
Whispers Wellness, or is it When the Moment Chooses You? Which one?
Yeah, I have both of them. Actually
Oh,
doing
okay.
both of them.
Okay.
Because 'cause I'm free now. I can
I
do
love
that.
that. I love that.
But when the moment chooses you is for trailblazers like this beautiful one right here, Bianca. She's been on there and you know what? You gotta come back because
I
you're doing
do have
like
to come back. Yes.
yeah, you gotta come
I
back.
got
But,
a whole update. I'm like, oh,
I
we
know.
change in entrepreneurship. You change like every week. You evolve.
But that's awesome, and it would
Yeah.
be great to hear that. So, yeah, I interview trailblazers and change agents that dare to dream, that
Hmm.
dare to disrupt their system. In that one, and the Whispers of Wellness, I wanted it to coincide with my business, the Wellness Whisper, coaching and consulting. So that one is more of a platform for all things well-being. So in there, that's really mainly me. I do bring in an expert every month to talk about different well-being strategies, but I really try to pour out my heart framework and the burnout that I experienced and all of the stories from
Hmm.
being within the system and thriving while you're in the system and then not thriving sometimes.
Right. So, as a fellow podcaster in, the conversations that I'm having with people, there are sessions and conversations where, I mean, there's gems in every one, but there are some that like really start to change my perspective on things and shift the way that I see things, which I really am grateful for. Is there a conversation that you heard on your podcast that really caused like a huge shift for you while listening to somebody else's story?
Oh my God, I've had so
I
many.
know.
I'm trying to remember. You know what? I'm going to say this because it was the first one
Mhm.
that I did. So, because I had to fight through the fear of starting. And
Mm.
so, Shola Richards, I was doing another event for my organization and I was kind of like the Oprah Winfrey interviewing him.
Mhm.
And so I asked him for a couple minutes and he talked to me and I tell him my idea. And he's like, "What is wrong with you? Just move. Just
Mhm.
do it.
Mhm.
Just do the thing, Charlene. You have everything you." It was almost like a scolding
Yeah.
in a sense, but very nicely.
Mhm.
And so, so I feel like his was like very significant because on the heels of him giving me that encouragement, I was able to make the ask and then he said yes. And so that gave me the courage to continue going and then have no problem asking people and being okay with rejection when it happens.
Of course,
So
yeah.
I would say that one, but there were many that have impacted me. A matter of fact, I love my podcast because I get so inspired by every story that
Mhm.
comes on there because I love seeing how different people navigate
Mhm.
through the challenges that they face or jump out and start businesses. And like when you were on there jumping out and starting a business, I was like, man, this is awesome. I think I found you on LinkedIn. I was like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, she is doing this thing, but it's just so inspiring for me as a new podcaster to see people doing it and to
Yeah.
come on the show and share your story so the other people on the podcast can be really blessed and
Mhm.
given action steps to do the thing that they want to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And, with, your story through nurse leadership and your book is about your story in nurse leadership, but also, inspiring other people to take action in their own careers. I could definitely see you shifting into doing more public speaking,
Yeah.
especially for leaders, specifically. So talk to me about the vision for the future. Where do you see yourself evolving from here?
I do actually see myself evolving to be a world renowned speaker. I'm
Mhm,
declaring it out there right now because I really love getting in
mhm,
audiences. Like the couple events that I went to do, there was something inside of me that I mean, it was almost like my insides was screaming like,
mhm,
"Yay, this is great." So I feel like I would love to be able to go up and really bring transformation because I feel like the essence of who I am reaches out into the audience. And so transformation is happening. You know, things are happening and you can see people catch those aha moments and they come afterwards and say, "Oh my God, this has been so helpful." So that energy was really amazing. I really enjoyed that. So I really see myself probably in the next 5 years, like specifically just speaking,
Mhm.
whether it's virtual or on the platform. I would love to really cultivate that gift and to be doing that in the next 5 years.
And I see you helping other leaders like advocate for themselves and also tap into their voice and
Yes.
start really giving them the courage to start speaking up on behalf of themselves and then also on the behalf of their team. Um,
Yes.
that kind of vision just came to mind as well.
I can see that. I
Yeah.
definitely can see that.
I definitely that's powerful. So if anybody's looking for speakers, or if
Hey.
you're a leader or just a visionary who, really wants to start working on your throat chakra and start to practice using your voice, please contact Charlene. I can definitely see an alignment here for sure. And then also let's go to Amazon and let's purchase When the Moment Chooses You and let's get inspired on our journey, our own journeys as well. So thank you, Charlene. It is a pleasure getting to know you more. I'm so happy I didn't have a
Yeah.
list of questions and let the conversation flow. I love this.
Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. I'm so happy for what you're doing. It was so good to see your podcast the other day. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's back."
I'm back. I'm back.
So real quick, so
Yes.
you were off for a while, right? And then you came back? 'Cause I wasn't
Yeah.
seeing it for a minute.
Yeah. So, just like in the journey, it's evolutionary, right? But essentially, I've tried to start podcasts several times in my life, just depending on wherever I was, and then I gave it a break, and then when really wanted to focus on the business and a lot of the work. So when you're an entrepreneur and this is your full time gig, I had to focus on what I need to do to survive. So
Yes.
I was focusing on just running the business, doing a lot of outreach, but what was really missing was, the content and really
Mm,
connecting with people, not only my potential clients, but also just the audience, knowing what is needed out in the world, another creative outlet. And I saw a quote, I heard a quote on TikTok actually before I restarted the podcast that said, "Is your business is not online, it basically doesn't exist." And
mm.
so one of my core principles in my business is visibility, and I was failing at
Okay,
that. I was visible in people's inboxes, but not in people's, content. So
got it.
with that, I decided to really reconnect to my original vision, which I want a lot of people to realize that when you're thinking about what's next, sometimes it's not about what's next, it's about what you need to finish. And
Mm,
so I decided to go ahead and reconnect. I started interviewing physicians live, but because I travel the world full time, I had a limiting belief that I had to only do podcasts live because I wanted this very crisp brand and I come from agency. And I realized that's not what's important. What's important is hearing from people. That's it.
yeah.
And so that's when I made the decision to go ahead and take it virtual and then pick back up and finish what I never completed.
Well, that is amazing. Well, thank you. Well, I can't wait to hear from you on the podcast
All
again.
right, yes.
Thank you for
I'm
having
gonna
me on the
come on. I'm
show.
coming on. I would love to.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you for having me on the show.
of course. Thank you, Charlene. Thank you guys so much for listening in. My name is Bianca Ariel. You're listening to Recalibrated Vision, and I want you guys to always and forever stay free. See you next time.